just going to ask, this is a closed meeting, so we cannot allow the people of the public, members of the public to be present in this meeting. The minister and the department will come at 2:30, then it's an open meeting, but this is a closed meeting until 2:30. So we're just asking the people in the gallery to excuse themselves. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Phil Christians. I'm the chairperson of this committee, SCOPA. Next to me is Mr. Dustin Davids. I'm going to give the members opportunity to introduce themselves, and then the AG and the audit committee. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair and colleagues. My name is Nomi Nkondlo. I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Beauty Stoffels, and I'm the member of Environmental Office.
Good day, Dirk Wessels, and I'm an alternate member of the committee, standing in for Member Van Wyk.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter Johnson, member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Afternoon, Norma French.
Good afternoon.
Member of the scope.
Good afternoon, colleagues
Yes, I knew.
and chairperson. Good afternoon. It's Basil Petrus.
Afternoon, Dave Bryant. I'm chairperson of Environment Committee.
Over to you for introduction.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable members, my name is Lizo Nzamela. I'm going to be presenting on environmental affairs. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. My name is Thamina Nakadin. I'm going to be presenting on Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. I'm Jasneem Adams, the Stakeholder Liaison Manager responsible for the Western Cape AG Office.
Afternoon, Chairman, members. My name is Jebel Botha. I was the Audit Manager on Environmental Affairs.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members. My name is Dumisani Qekwani. I was an Audit Manager at Cape Nature. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. My name is Tsepo Motomi. I'm from the AG's office. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. It's Paul Slack. I'm the chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee of Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. I'm Francois Barnard, Chairperson of the Audit Committee of the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
Thank you very much. Any other people on the... Nobody else. Member Peters did introduce himself. Thank you very much. Over to you, AG. And members, honorable members, and Minister and Department. We're going to start now with introductions. Next to me is Mr. Dustin Davids. And then we do the members first, and then we're going to do, I know we've got a member online, Member Petrus. We'll give him the opportunity last after the members. Members, over to you.
Afternoon, my name is Nomi Nkondlo.
Afternoon, my name is Beauty Stoffel.
Afternoon, Derek Wessels.
Good afternoon, Peter Johnson, member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Dave Bryant, member of the Committee on Environment, Chairperson.
Afternoon, Nama French Mbombo, member of SCOPA.
Member online.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and colleagues. It's Basil Petrus.
Thank you. Over to Minister and Department introductions.
Chairperson, Standing Committee, I'm Anton Vadel, MEC responsible for Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
Good afternoon, Gerard Gerber, Head of Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
Afternoon, Chair and honourable members. Ashley Naidu, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Cape Nature. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Name is Denver Hendricks, past chairperson of Cape Nature for the period under review.
Good afternoon, Kiki Loubser, incoming chair of Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Johannes Fritz, Director of Financial Management within the department.
Good afternoon, Anwar Ghafoor, Acting Chief Director Management Support from the department.
Good morning, everyone. Karen Chippy, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, Chief Director, Environmental Sustainability.
Good afternoon, Ayub Mohammed, Chief Director, Environmental Governance, Policy Coordination and Enforcement.
Good day, Marlene Larosse, Director for Biodiversity and Coastal Management within the department.
Good afternoon, Fezeka Mabusela, Chief Director, Development Planning.
Good afternoon, Ahmed Basir, Director Environmental Law Enforcement from the department.
Good afternoon, Elena Jacobs, Director Development Planning, Intelligence Research, and also Acting Spatial Director from the department.
Good afternoon, Ron Mukanya, Director Sustainability, also from the department.
Good afternoon, Natasha Davis-Volmerans, also from the department, Director Pollution and Chemicals Management.
Good afternoon, Brent Verlander, General Manager, Human Resources at Cape Nature. Thank you.
Good afternoon all, Hussein Isaacs, Director Climate Change.
Good afternoon, Chair, honourable members, Salim Haider, Director Waste Management.
Good afternoon, Chair, honourable members, Joy Lena, Director Air Quality Management, the department.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kobus Manro, Director Development Management of the department.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alan Rhodes from the Spatial Planning Directorate of the department.
Good afternoon, Francois Wist, Program Manager, RCEP Program.
Good afternoon, Paul Hardcastle, Director Planning and Policy Coordination, the department.
Good afternoon, Bulelo Jacobs, Acting Director Conservation Operations, Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Coral Burrs, Executive Director for Biodiversity Capabilities at Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Shiraz Ismail, Executive Director Ecotourism and Access, Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Mohammed Bayat, CFO, Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Barry Barnes, General Manager, Strategy, Governance and Risk, Cape Nature.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. Ibrahim Ari, Risk and Performance, Cape Nature.
At the back there, at the back, Audit Committee and Auditor General.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamina Nakadin. I'm the Engagement Manager for Cape Nature.
Good afternoon. My name is Lizon Zamela. I'm the Engagement Manager, Environmental and Development Planning. Thanks.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Dumisana Klokwani. I was an audit manager at Cape Nature. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Deval Botha. I was the audit manager at Environmental Affairs.
Good afternoon, Chair. Paul Slack, Chair of the Audit Committee of Cape Nature.
Thank you very much. Online.
Good afternoon, Chair. Francois Barnard, Chairperson of the Audit Committee of the Department of Environmental Affairs.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Blanche Cancross, Internal Audit.
Good afternoon, Ritvan van Rensburg from Provincial Forensic Services.
Thank you very much for the introductions. Minister, over to you and the HOD for introductory remarks. Thank you.
No, Chairperson, thank you. I think we can actually get right into it. But just to say that we all understand that we operate under very difficult financial circumstances, budget cuts, etc. That pressure pulls right through the institution. It also hit us hard as Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, as well as Cape Nature, but we do have a very competent team working 24/7 to try and keep us on the right track, and we're well prepared to try and field all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Members, as Minister touched on, the year under review was a difficult year in terms of the budget adjustments mid-year. We did explore all the options to make sure that we still achieve as many of our targets as possible, although we did make those adjustments. And yes, it's thank you to the departments, to the team and all the officials, because it's only through the efforts of the teams that we're able to do that. But we welcome the questions by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw this morning the Cape Nature also did the introduction. So do your introductions and then we'll just go over to financials. We'll first do the department, then you, but just do the introductions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. To echo MEC and HOD Herwa, we're about half the financial resources that's allocated to MEC. We're a little bit stretched, a little bit over 400 million. So our vacancy rate you will see, and managing that, but we do attempt to meet all of our outputs and targets as reported in our annual report. And thanks to the very capable team and our board members here, the incoming and outgoing interim chair. And hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions or clarifications that you have. Thank you, Chair.
Afternoon, Chair. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. Since I'm the outgoing chair, I won't have too much to say to you this afternoon, except to try and answer any of the questions that you may have after interrogating this document that you have in front of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that's it, members. I think we're going to jump right into the department. So we, like I usually do it, we have Part C, Part E, and Part F. Part C is 126 to 139, governance. It will allow you to ask 2 questions per member, and then if there's follow-up, we'll do that, and then we'll ask if there's any additional questions. I'll kick off with the questions quickly, members, and then is there members with questions? I'll kick off with some questions, and then I'll give over to the members for some questions. Minister HOD, page 128 and 29 on governance. Your key risks that you had was, amongst other, unsustainable use of the Western Cape natural resource base, and also the inability to attract and retain suitable staff. So that is also a risk in your emerging risk in the following financial year, right? At page 129. The question that I have is, I saw that terminations was 32, but 14 out of that was resignations. Only 11 didn't give reasons. So I'm asking myself, how are you going to find out why people is leaving, resigning, if you don't know the reasons? 11 of the 14 didn't give reasons. If you can help me with that. And maybe just, I also saw in the document, most of your people resigning is between 30 and 49. So, it's people that can work. I know there's opportunities, but you've got a problem to retain your staff. And I know you've got highly skilled staff. You invest in that staff and you lose them. So you should have some strategy. And I know you have established a GovCom where people assist you of giving you, the assistance. But I that for me is maybe and just tell me about I know the employment wellness is a transversal function, but is that enough for your employees? Maybe I just want to kick off with that. Members, over to you. Questions? Member Nkontlo?
Thank you, Chairperson. 2 questions for now on the same page 1 to 8. My first question is that if the department can just explain what are the economic crime risks that is under government key activities that they are referring to that were evaluated in this particular reporting year. The second one on the same issue on the unsustainable use of natural resources. I just want to understand where is this particular process of the OD development that is referred to, which at the time it is said work was undertaken in trying to, I think, resolve or get a response through the biodiversity unit. So if we can just get an update about where is this matter for now. Thanks.
I see no other hands. Member Stoffels?
Part C, and in terms of risk management, MEC.
The page quickly, member.
126. Okay. As the accounting officer of the department responsible for implementing enterprise risk management in accordance with the National Treasury Public Sector Risk. The question is, how much of the risk is in the department refusal to appoint an environmental commissioner? The second question is, how much of the risk does the land grabs pose to the province biodiversity, given the land grabs are mainly caused by land hunger and the need for housing for the poor? What the department responds to address this challenge? What is the department's response to this challenge?
Thank you, Minister. That's your 2, member. That's your 2. Minister HOD.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members. I'll start with the question in terms of the resignations. Yes, there are both push and pull factors. So our teams are under great pressure. And although we do invest heavily in terms of employee health and wellness, and we are taking all the measures that we can in order to provide, to not have unnecessary push factors, the pressures are high. The budget pressures did result in this year in us being unable to fill vacant posts. So those that remain have to carry a heavier load. And then there is also the pull factor. So we do hold the exit interviews. People do not have to, on that record, disclose the reason. Those are the reasons recorded for resignation, but they do not have to provide a reason. But we know the post that they've been offered by the City of Cape Town as an example: higher salaries, less pain. And therefore we are losing staff. And it is in that young professionals, because those are the people, as soon as we train people up to be environmental management inspectors, as an example, with that EMI qualification, very quickly they get opportunities in other places. So although if they go elsewhere in the country, they're still a valuable resource making a difference in the country. But yes, we are losing. And that was a high number of staff to lose, and we're not able to fill those vacant posts. And yes, our service delivery model is such that that our services are provided by our own highly professional, registered professionals. those 3 scarce skills, both the environmental officers, the planners, and the GIS technicians. So yes, we do are impacted. And again, it's a vicious cycle because as we lose staff, the pressure on those that remain, the push factors increase. But yes, we are, of course, continuously looking at the prioritization of the filling of posts, and exploring all the options that are available to us to manage those pressures and doing the prioritization. But we are seeing the impact on our services. But yes, we do want people to disclose the reasons in the exit interviews, and we are busy exploring what's further possible for us to do to try and manage that. In terms of the environmental crime, maybe to ask Ayub Mohammed and Ahmad Basir, responsible for our environmental law enforcement work, to maybe speak briefly to the environmental crime in the province. There's obviously also environmental crime that Cape Nature deals with, but in terms of the department's annual report, Ayub and Ahmad, maybe just a brief input on the environmental crime.
Thank you, HUD, members. With regards to environmental complaints that are received, it's purely reactive. The department does not have the necessary capacity to do proactive measures in terms of doing surveillance, etc. So a lot of the complaints that we do receive are from members of the public, organs of state, as well as NGOs. There's been a surge in pollution, particularly with regards to dysfunctional wastewater treatment works, pollutions that are caused by non-compliance with waste management license at waste disposal facilities. For examples, fires, and also that is seeping into rivers and groundwater contamination. So these are the type of complaints that we do receive on a daily basis, particularly from communities that resides within close proximity of these facilities. Another number of complaints that we do receive is with regards to the clearing of critical endangered by vegetation, and also indigenous vegetation. And that's particularly in our farming, because we are in the Western Cape, we have a large contingency of farming practices. And we then also conduct these type of investigations in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture, as well as the Department of Water Affairs and Sanitation, particularly when it comes to illegal construction of dams or diversions of rivers or infilling of wetlands, etc. Yeah, thank you very much.
Maybe Ayub, if you want to add to that, Chairperson.
Yeah, thanks. Just in respect of Part C, where we mentioned there about the environmental management inspectors, Mr. Basir spoke about the pollution, and a lot of these events happen within our communities, particularly the low-income areas and stuff like that. So our staff have to go into those areas, and that's where they probably get the most resistance, because if people see a government vehicle, then you become a target, and these are environmental management inspectors. So what we've also done is, for example, they go in with unmarked vehicles. But given the state of some of our communities, they're unable to enter, and that is what poses the risk for us. And it just exacerbates and prolongs our attempts to remedy those situations. So that also relates to the lack of service delivery by municipalities. You would have seen in the other parts is the number of notices that we've issued that to 2 different municipalities as well. So it's particularly those areas that where our staff is susceptible to the risk of performing their duties. Thanks.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Ayub. We originally, that risk was in terms of the EMIs in particular, but we did then broaden that because it's all staff that go on site visits. Often there's urgency in terms of the law enforcement work, which makes it difficult to manage the risk. But yes, it's something that we're managing on a continuous basis. Thank you. Then just to proceed in terms of the rest of the questions, maybe in terms of the OD process, as part of the broader process in terms of the law reform and the restructuring that Cape Nature also went through. On the department side, we did do the follow-on OD process. We were not able to complete that. We got to the stage where we required the go-ahead from in terms of the budget availability and the consultation with the national department. But because of uncertainty at the time in terms of where we will be going in terms of the different proposals in the province, and then after that the budget measures so at the moment we're not able to create additional posts unless you have the budget. But so although there are different means by which you're able to obtain the services against post, whether it is secondments or contract appointments, or at the moment we're not able to do that because we're not able to create the post because at the moment the budget's not available. But we have, as we indicate in the annual report, we have explored the options in terms of our existing envelope. We have filled some of the critical posts, but not enough. So we are busy with an OD process this year, 24-25, for the department as a whole, during which we are actually addressing all the OD processes that were not completed. So we're busy with that at the moment. In terms of the Environmental Commissioner, thank you for that question. As previously presented, there is a number of measures that are in place. So whether it is the oversight by the standing committees and the SCOPA itself, or through the Public Protector, Human Rights Commission, the Public Service Commission. So all those oversight mechanisms are in place. The Public Service, the Environmental Commissioner have very little powers. It's really recommendations only that the Commissioner would be able to make. And therefore we have shown that there is enough oversight and measures in place to manage the risk. But we not, that process is underway in terms of the parliamentary process, in terms of considering the proposed amendments, and of course any inputs to go to the Department of the Premier and to the Premier in terms of that law reform process. But yes, in terms of risk for the environment, this is a critical part of the strategy in terms of our law enforcement and all our other efforts. With the municipalities, with the other role players, there are particular areas of risk, like unlawful occupation of land, and therefore the cooperation agreements that are in place in terms of all the different role players timelessly responding during the COVID lockdown restrictions. We were limited in that we were not able to do counter spoliation, and that did prevent, as per the national directions, we were not able to do what we would normally do in terms of protecting our property. But obviously since then, a key focus also for Cape Nature in terms of making sure that we protect the provincial assets. But yes, the law enforcement work and all the other work with municipalities and others, a critical part to make sure that we manage the risk for the environment. We also, through our environmental planning work, we're promoting also, the more proactive tools that are available. So the work that we touch on in this annual report in terms of the environmental management frameworks in particular being important, because we're also trying to identify go areas where certain developments will have less impact or are considered more desirable. I think, Minister wanted to come in on anything.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, on the Environmental Commissioner again, the cost factor will be also important one to discuss and to debate. There's no extra money. Just coming from a Budget Council meeting, and if you look at the newspapers, now remember our income in the country is corporate tax, private tax, and VAT. That's the main three contributors, and we on a 20 billion rand under collection. So there's surprises coming. We in this pressure, and we need to deal with this. And it's always where can we spend money the best. If I've got any extra money, there's a couple of things that we need to address to address the risk going forward. And currently, my personal opinion is that the Environmental Commissioner, we do have checks and balances that can deal with that. And at the end, if we get to the courts, the quicker, the better for all. Land grabs, it's an interesting one. It's not only us. We concern about the critical biodiversity that we can lose, the safety of the people that go into areas where you should not live. But there's housing departments, there's infrastructure departments, there's other departments, SAPs that must play their role. Within that, we can only advise the public, although sometimes if we advise them, they hold us hostage intent, so that we must promise them houses, etc. We know our communities. But at the end of the day, we need to protect the environment as far as possible. Then also, I don't know of the members in the standing committee, but my children is also 25 years and older, and that kind of generation, they've got the 3-5 year guys. They don't enter the job to stay forever there. It's something that as parents we all need to get used to. Our children do move, and the younger people do move very quickly. And then another thing that I'm worried about, and that's actually, I think if we really look into this, is the salary brackets between us as a provincial government, the larger municipalities like the city of Cape Town, your bigger municipality, Drakensteins and Stellenbosch, and the private sector. Yes, if we then become the training school, I think that's also a contribution towards building South Africa and building the Western Cape. But you cannot keep people if they want to go and if they want to move on. I see it in a positive that we then invest in other sectors where those skills you can transfer. It's difficult for us, it's difficult for the team, because obviously you want to keep those skills, but that's the environment we work in. Thank you, Chair.
Before I'm going to ask for new questions, is there follow-ups on the question your questions, members? No follow-ups? Is it fine? I'm going to ask now for new questions. Maybe just I want to leave that to you, the Chief Director, a question to you, because so Member Coulter, you go first. New questions, yes.
Chair, I think it's a new question, although it also stems from the response that was given. I'm trying to understand on the risk of the inability to attract and retain suitable staff. There's a statement that there's a lack of comprehensive retention policy in the department, and also trying to reprioritize to do more with less and scaling down to terminate certain tasks. I'm always interested, what does this mean for those who are subjected to then take additional roles? What exactly does this particular statement mean, and why is the department not having a retention policy? I'm assuming that in this financial year you've corrected this, or it remains the same. Then the other question, Chair, is on page 129, on the poor spatial and land use management. 129, yeah. It says there has been no movement in this risk beside the Chief Directorate undergoing a comprehensive zero-based risk identification. Why is that, and how are we resolving this issue, given that spatial planning is one of the biggest challenges that indeed realizes also all the other related problems in as far as space is concerned, and the issue we're discussing about people invading land.
Can I just throw my two out before I thought Member Coulter was going to talk about the post of Chief Director Management Support performing the Chief Financial Officer post, if you can just give us details how far you with that. And then secondly, what I forgot to mention also, just to latch on to that, you also said there's a salary level 7 and 8 framework. I'm talking about staff, and there was some sort of inconsistencies with the core and the PAS. If you can just is that sorted out? If you can just elaborate on that, Member Stoffels.
No, Chair, I didn't raise. Oh, sorry.
HOD.
Thank you for those questions. In terms of the inability to attract and retain staff and the options that we're taking there, so yes, because of the budget pressures over a number of years, for instance, we're unable to pay, even if our staff perform at a level higher than fully effective, we are unable to pay merit the bonuses. We're also battling to send staff on training as we used to in the past because of the budget constraints. Yes, there's other opportunities available, more affordable opportunities for training, but we're not able to provide that measure as we're able to do in the past. And then, yes, it was asked earlier, is the employer health and wellness and creating the best work environment that we can enough? It's not enough. Of course, it's important. But it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. But yes, we do the prioritization that the teams also do is critical to make sure that we're not just busy and more busy, but that we really are focusing on what will have the most impact. It is a dilemma that our officials are public servants and people have joined the department in order to serve. And therefore, the moral injury that officials suffer, because even if we wanted to, and even if you can see the need, our ability are only able to go so far. But that's why we keep on pushing to do as best as we can with the limited resources. And we also do tell the staff that they have to take care of themselves, in order for them to manage the risk for the teams and manage the burnout and manage the stresses in order for them to be able to sustain their services. But it is something that we continuously looking at what are the options that is available to us. We are very fortunate that we do have the lowest cultural entropy in the province, meaning that we have the healthiest organizational culture as a department across the Western Cape departments. And yeah, we continue to invest in that. In terms of thank you for the question in terms of the spatial planning and the importance of that. Just to say that this has been a key focus in terms of spatial planning are being mainstreamed into the main business of the Growth for Jobs strategy. And there's a lot of work that already started in the year under review in terms of our development planning, intelligence management work, but also the spatial alignment work that we do within the province, but critically the support to the municipalities, both in terms of the intelligence work, but also the capital expenditure frameworks, the municipal spatial development frameworks, the municipal land use management, because it's in that municipal space where the lived reality of the citizens really come to the fore, and then the power of planning to try and change that lived reality. So you'll see in the report the work that was underway in terms of the housing market studies as an example, the inclusionary housing policy framework being a key policy framework in terms of the spatial transformation, but yes, critical work underway in terms of spatial planning. And it will remain a key focus. It's a priority for the minister also in the new term of office. The CFO responsibility and the Chief Director Management Support post. It is unfortunate that we've passed. September was the 1-year anniversary of that post being vacant. We did start the recruitment process, and we got quite far, and then received the national directive that then called on everybody to reconsider and look at the financial situation. And then a process have been started in the province, a transversal process to look at the models that we're using in terms of those responsibilities. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different considerations in that space, although there was initial work that the Department of the Premier did undertake. In terms of the models, we really have to take that into a organizational design process, which we are now doing. But it does mean that it causes a delay. So for more than a year now, Anwar Ghafoor as the director has also been the Chief Director Management Support, acting Chief Director. and Johannes, as the Director of Financial Management, is also taking up the CFO responsibility. And it has been a very busy and a difficult year. But yes, we are busy with that process. And in consultation with the Department of the Premier. We're not the only department that have been where there has been this delay. There is a number of departments within the province that are similarly affected by that. But it is it's an area where there's risk and where we need to manage a lot of control. And therefore, it isn't a priority for us for that audit process to address this as well. The level 7s and 8s, another example, we did not have a job evaluation a system that was operational in the country for quite some time. The national department have now since concluded on a new agreement with service providers. So we had to do benchmarking, and that did hold up the 7 and 8 framework process as well. But we're now able to again do job evaluation in South Africa. The 7 and 8s were piloted in our department, but it's an issue across departments. And it was really valuable work in consultation with the staff in terms of really looking at job content, making sure that moving forward, there's consistency in terms of job content requirements, and that we address this issue as the pilot so that we can roll that out across the departments and elsewhere in the country. But the job evaluation is what held that up, and that's underway. So we will be concluding on the 7/8 framework process during 24-25. Thank you.
On to your follow-up. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my question is on page 130 on minimizing conflict of interest. My question is, for the department, is conflict of interest only within the space of tendering? And I'm raising this because I see here you talk about disclosures and everything. And in the same report, in page 246, there's a mention of in the political office bearer's office where there are 2 departmental officials were identified as close family members of officials who occupy key management positions. Can you explain what the statement is and how is your minimizing of conflict of interest able, to apply not only in that office, but generally in the department so that you do not have people employing their friends, their kids, and, within the department. The second one, and my last one, Chair, is on the BBBE. The department in its report, let me just open the page, in page 138, I think there's a whole of a number of paragraphs here that explains, I'm assuming this explains based on the process that I think was still dealt with by National Treasury. The department was in this particular financial year undertaking, as it says there, number 2, a technical review be undertaken on the current procurement system. What does this mean? Are you saying you're not going to be implementing the PPPFA nor BBBE until you conclude your technical review? And have you concluded, because this was something of the last financial year, and can you share that report with us?
Minister, over there.
Chairperson, thank you. Chairperson, on the conflict of interest, yes, obviously there's various kinds of conflicts of interest. When I had to take a decision when I was here, and I was the mayor in Swartland, I then went to the Premier and I told him, listen, sorry, I can't take this decision because I had to bite it when I was a mayor. On the appointments kind of side, there's no conflict of interest between my ministry and the department. We must remember my head of my department is there for 15 years, coming with me. And as people grow within the department, it's their right to apply for positions, and we respect that. And I'm a firm believer that we need to grow our own timber. But also to state that I think we need to be quite honest with one another. I was in a situation where my son was looking for a job. And the young people these days, they do it online. And one evening at home, I asked him, how's the job going? And he said to me, no, I applied to the city of Cape Town. I said, but you can't. He said, why not? I'm not the politician. So we need to accept that there's a world out there, and we cannot stand. And I know it will be for me personally very difficult to defend if my child must work for government, but he's an individual and they've got rights. So it's a very difficult one. I hear where the member is coming from, and we need to have the line and toe the line, but I can assure the committee there's no conflict of interest in my department, between my department and the ministry. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is important matter to manage. So in terms of our controls, in terms of people having to declare if there's a conflict of interest, the key management declarations, obviously it's about those transactions as by definition set out in the accounting standard. Certain staff are identified as key management personnel, and they have to make those declarations. But then it's about making sure that those transactions that are there any transactions, and no other than salaries being paid, there are no other transactions. But of course, that's where the control and all the monitoring and oversight come into it. And that's something the conflict of interest, ethical conduct, fraud prevention, all that those controls and that combined assurance system, of course, plays a critical role. But yeah, thank you for the question.
Yes, sir. There's a second question that Member Makontlo asked.
All right, it was on the next page. I just turned it over. Apologies. I'll also ask maybe the CFO, Johannes, to come in on that, but I'll give a first response. We are compliant with the requirements as it stands, but there is further work that we're also doing. So in terms of the reporting to the commission, as we indicated, that's not applicable. But in terms of the provincial procurement regulations, there we have made those amendments. Certain things we did transversely in terms of the guidance by Provincial Treasury, but we have also updated our accounting officer system in terms of making sure that we meet the new requirements. But maybe to ask Johannes, CFO, if he wants to elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. Yeah, so initially with the implementation of the new preferential procurement regulations in 2023, January 2023, there were a bit of chaos with the implementation of the regulations. Eventually, National Treasury clarified the position of the regulations, but within the provincial context, Provincial Treasury assessed the regulations and then issued further instructions to the department. Those are the instructions that we included in our accounting officer system. Subsequent to that, the Preferential Procurement Act has also been now ascended to. Currently, between National Treasury and the various provincial departments, we are busy looking at the regulations for the new Act. So once that is in place, then the Act and the regulations will be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Is that governance? Is that all the question on governance? Can we move to part E? 188 to 190, PFMA compliance report, members? I don't have a question there, but I want to say I at least check that your invoices is paid on time. 697 out of 697, well done. So I saw that. That is the one thing I pick up at all the Cape Nature. I can't say the same, but we'll get there. Member Kontlo.
Thank you, Chair. On page 188, Chair, I'm interested on this disciplinary hearing where an official had to pay 82.80 rand.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because, Chair, one has been, I think, reading, and I even see here, there was an irregular expenditure of 31,000 that was condoned. What was this 82.80 for that would have taken this person to a DC? Perhaps you could give us an explanation. My second one, which is a standard in all these departments, is on the other procurement means. Obviously, we're interested to know why would you go through a limited bidding instead of an open tender process to give everybody a fair chance, considering, and we're not in any way accusing you of doing something that is irregular. At least at this time, we do know that it's allowed in the PFMA provincial treasury. So I don't want you to go there and try to explain what we know. I'm just wanting you to explain on this specific one, why would you have gone to a limited bidding on this particular procurement? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I always leave the limited bidding to Member Nkontla. Thank you, HOD.
Thank you for those questions. In terms of that, so those are the 31,000. It was in the procurement of a laptop, where in terms of the lowest price, the sequence within which it was in the documentation, the one at the top was in fact 82 Rand higher than the one below that. So it was a template issue. So the laptop that was purchased was 82 Rand more expensive than it could have been. So we didn't have the loss of the full amount because we still obtained a laptop, but we could have, the loss was 82 Rand. So so we followed, as we do, the process to look at what happened within our controls that happened. We have since changed our protocols and our documentation. And yes, that was the loss. And so we have improved our controls to make sure that that doesn't happen again, because although that loss was only 82, it's of course the issue of our controls that if that fails, there could be a bigger loss. In terms of the limited bidding, thank you for that question. The market was tested by the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, but in terms of my departments, when that project shifted over, in terms of my own accounting officer system, we had to satisfy ourselves through our own structures that was the process of limited bidding. So the bid committee considered them as the market was tested, and then that was the recommendation, and as it was approved. So there was a testing of the market, and that's why a limited bidding process was followed. Of course, every time that we would go out with this project, we will afresh test the market, because we do want there to be competition in terms of, and therefore there will first be a testing of market. But that was in terms of the green economy ecosystem support, the GEES project. That's why that was a limited bid.
Is that it from Part E? Member Nkontla?
HOD, in testing the market, are you saying this was the only bidder that actually would have responded, and that's why you only sourced from it? Am I getting you correct?
Yes. Can we move on to Part F? Members, we're moving to Part F. Just the first question, maybe from my side, is that the compensation of employees, the amount is going up, but the staff is going down. Just I see it's note 3, and then I have that is page 213. Is that sustainable? That is because the amount of money that you spend goes up, but the employees is coming down. And then page 214 is voted funds to be surrendered to the revenue fund. If you can just elaborate on that. That's the two, my two. Member Nkontla, your two.
I think, Chair, following on your question, I'm not sure. When I was just reading the book and on the economic classification, one thing that I see, like program on biodiversity management, which is program 5, that actually the department, not all programs, actually this one, and I think I'm trying to check the other one, that when you consider the budget split, that it's COE heavy. and one is interested, and I'm not in any way casting a judgment. I'm trying to understand in terms of your own delivery mechanism. Is it in the nature of your department that is the case? I mean, if even in development planning, if you consider the budget of the department, it's more COE heavy, you know. So I'm really just on that question, wanting to understand your delivery model and why that is the case. And then my second question, Chair, is on page 212. On page 212, I just want to understand there on the goods and services. I think can we get more information about the underspending, maybe just to give more context so that one is able to understand the issue of the legal fees and this maintenance of air quality that was reduced. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the members? HOD, over to you.
Thank you. It's not sustainable that the cost of employment is going up, yet our number of staff is going down. It wasn't our intention that our cost of employment relative to the rest of our budget would be so high. That is our service delivery model that our staff themselves provide our services. But over the years, because of the budget pressures, a lot of our project money, a lot of our operational budget even have been reduced. So although our service delivery model is cost of employment heavy, not to the extent that with the budget reductions have forced us into. But yes, we are again busy with Treasury to look at how do we manage this risk for the province. And yes, even though we are fully exploring through the OD process, how do we have most impact? Where's the efficiencies? Where's the innovation? How do we make sure that we are as efficient and effective as we can be with our resources? But there are critical areas where we do require more resources. So it is not sustainable. In terms of the voted funds to be surrendered on page 214, maybe to ask CFO to just briefly come in on that. The voted funds to be surrendered to the revenue fund.
Thank you, HOD. So the amount as voted funds to be surrendered, that's the underspending for the year under review, the 3705. So we haven't utilized the money, so we paid it back to the exchequer. Thank you.
As required, and maybe Johannes also then on the goods and services, the underspending, we do indicate there, it's really in terms of the, in terms of the underspending due to the lower legal fees, and as we indicate there, the actual bid value in terms of the air quality monitoring equipment were lower than budgeted for. But maybe Johannes, for you to come in, and then if Ayub wants to also speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. So in terms of legal fees normally used to be a relatively high expenditure for the department. If you look on page 229, the table for goods and services, you will notice that the comparative figure for the previous financial year for legal fees was 3.9 million. So if you take that, and then for the year under review, we only spent 899,000. So within our budget, we had provision for a bigger amount to be paid towards legal fees. But unfortunately, or fortunately, so we didn't receive those claims. And then also in terms of the air quality monitoring stations under contractors, you will notice previous financial year we had 1.2 million. For the current year, we had 899,000. So in terms of our budgeting process, we made provision for it, but when we went out to the market, the responses were much lower. So there were some efficiencies through that process for the air quality monitoring stations. Thank you.
I think if I can just, when we talk about legal fees, then we talk about the cost of attorneys and advocates. So, and that's what it is. So we've got to pay counsel. We don't pay the state attorney, but we got to pay counsel when they appear for us in the High Court. So it's actually a good indicator for us. It's a sign of the economy that there hasn't been a lot of litigation against the department because of the decisions that we take. Remember, the department takes environmental authorization decisions and a range of other decisions, Section 24G, etc. And when people are dissatisfied with the decision that the minister ultimately takes on appeal, they can review us in the High Court. So we've had a slump or a drop in the litigation against the department, and these are mainly cases that have been carrying through. So for us, it's actually a good sign that we're spending less money on litigation.
Thank you very much. Is there a follow-up, Wendell Kundla? Can we move on? New questions?
No questions, Chair, and thanks for the response. Maybe, Minister, in the discussions in Cabinet, considering the budget constraints, the agility of departments, I think, around how we manage money is something that I think must always be looked at. Because if we're anticipating particular budgets based on baselines or based on previous practice, and then we're able to underspend for whatever reasons, as I explained, which is a good thing. I don't think there's an argument, particularly when you do not have money. So your intention is obviously to try as save as you can so that you can redirect monies. So I'm just saying, I think in this current fiscal environment, it is good that colleagues are able to budget for so much and they end up saving because that what they anticipated didn't happen. So I think we must see more of that, especially in a difficult fiscal envelope. My question for this one, Chair, is that on page 227, I think one looked on the notes or annexures on the other side. I'm not sure whether the response on the monies that were unspent on this grant, the Regional Socio-Economic Project grant, is it the issue of the scheduling? Because I normally hear this on the other grants. I'm not sure whether that's the reason here, that sometimes the money that arrives may be late in that municipality. Is that the reason? Because also when I considered, I think it's in page 253, I see there are some municipalities will utilize 50% of that money, others didn't at all. And that, for me, I think has got serious impact, in municipalities because grants are like free money of the state, particularly in the municipality. If you can provide some more information about what exactly is the situation here. And the next one is on page 229. Whilst you account there about the spike from the previous year to the current on consultants, because you explain only the GES from DDET, the 4 million. What was the other difference of money? Why did you have so much, spike on your consultant services, especially because you are a human resource heavy department? So what exactly did you have to sort of resource, including, I think, lab services and the training and development? I think those are the spikes on this one on goods and services, Chair, that I just need more clarity on. Thank you.
Thank you. Just my two, page 232 and 233. I'm always interested to ask with the foreign travel that I don't know, it's much higher than the other year, but what did the department benefit from this foreign travel? If you can answer that, and of course, debt written off, bulk of the debt written off pertains to a former official. If you can just expand on that, 232 and 233. HOD.
Thank you. Maybe to ask Francois Wist, our program manager for RSIP, to respond to the RSIP question. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. Yes, there's a misalignment in the financial years of the municipalities and of province. So they actually have until end of June, according to their financial years, to spend the funds. So that is normally in those 3 months from where the provincial financial year ends in end of March until end of June that the spending actually is implemented, because before that it is planning, community participation and tender processes and so on. And then often there is a spike after the report has to be finalized. So it is every year it's a bit of a dilemma, because what you see is not really what is happening on the ground. They actually have the next 3 months to spend. So that explains that to a large extent.
Thank you, Francois. In terms of the consultant fees, I'll also ask CFO to come in on this, but if you look at the note, a big part of the spike was the shift of the green economy ecosystem project, that 4 million, that project shifted to our department in that year. So that it was a big part of that increase. But of course, was a number of other projects, and maybe you have to ask CFO just to briefly speak to that, and then I'll respond to the foreign travel question. Maybe Johannes also to speak to the debt written off in terms of that question. Thank you.
Thank you, actually. So in terms of the consultant services, it's not always that we have the capabilities and the skills within the department. So we need to buy in those. Some of these scenarios were for a topographical survey at the respective waste landfill sites at municipals, where we need engineering services to do these topographical surveys. Then also within the department, we do a lot of rehabilitation on the respective rivers, the Burke and the Breda River. Then we're working on the Hayes River catchment, where it's labor intensive, and we need to buy in those services. HOD also mentioned earlier the housing market studies. So these are detailed and specific studies that are being done, and we need particular skills for these. So there are a number of instances where the skills doesn't reside within the department, and we unfortunately would need to buy in those skills. In terms of the debt matter, this is an official that was within the employee in the department. Unfortunately, there were some health concerns, and there were a number of leave without pay days. Unfortunately, the official passed on, and we weren't able to recover the leave without pay days from his estate. And considering the situation, the decision was then taken to write off the amount.
Thank you, CFO. In terms of the benefit from the foreign travel, that's an important question. We more and more part of international efforts in terms of whether it is climate change or other global challenges, a global risk, but also global opportunity. So the foreign travel is critical in terms of our partnerships, and also trying to access the knowledge and resources also, and just build the network in terms of a number of critical areas. And that's where the foreign travel come in. A lot of the sponsorship then also come in on that. But yes, we have to make sure, and we make sure that this is in priority areas. It's in some particular partnerships. And of course, there's the knowledge that come back, and there's the networks that we need to follow up on. So in terms of the different foreign travel reports on each one of that foreign travel, and in particular strategies in terms of which that relate to. There's of course specific projects in terms of general question in terms of what does our international partnerships look like. There is a list of international partners that we're working with on different projects, and often the travel would be related to those initiatives. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. Member Mkolto.
My two last ones, Chair. Page 239 on 13.2. I just want to get some understanding on these plea and sentence agreements. What's the number of these private enterprises? I'm assuming it's companies. What's the number that were involved in this, and the nature of the default that actually the department and them would have entered into these plea sentence agreements? And then the second one is on page 246 under 25.1, the SIU matter and the litigation. I see these are supposedly matters of the previous year, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to understand what is the status of these cases to date. Thanks.
Thank you very much. My one is 247. 247, just at the bottom, 29 major assets. There's it's under investigation there. If you can just give us there, and then confirm losses. If you can just give us some explanation on 247. Just I wanted to ask that question, but it's related to the municipalities. The answer that was given, I mean, that's the answer we usually get because the financial years is not the same. But maybe what will help us, because I always say this is a public document. If you look at this, you say the municipality is not spending the money. Maybe just a footnote, explanation to say, you know, our financial years is not the same, because people look at this document. We've asked the question, what about the man in the street? So I just as a note. Thank you. HOD.
Thank you. Thank you also for that input, and certainly in terms of the future reports, to make that clear from the start. In terms of the plea and sentence agreement, maybe to ask Ahmad, are you to come in terms of that particular case?
Thank you. That's not a specific case, but this is the balance that is available in our account over the years of where we've entered into plea and sentence agreements with transgressors. So what happens is where they have transgressed and we take them and they can be prosecuted, they can obviously enter a plea and sentence agreement with them, and the amount is then determined by the courts with our inputs and the NPA. So that is the way the process works. And then instead of them getting a conviction, it's basically a plea and sentence that they've agreed that they are guilty. So we've amassed an amount of 832,000 rand, which is available from those cases over the years. It's not one specific case. So that is what we have at the moment. And those normally come with a proviso that is also in the note there, that money can only be used for environmental enforcement purposes and for rehabilitation and basically for the EMI function, to execute the EMI function.
Thank you, Ayub. There was the question in terms of on page 246, in terms of the special investigation unit, as well as that one litigation case, maybe to ask Johannes to speak to the SIU matter. And maybe Johannes can probably also speak to the litigation case in terms of the detail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, actually. So yeah, the SIU case stems from the COVID scenario. So there was investigation within the department. Our expenditure for COVID products that we procured was just over 8,000. According to the SIU's information, was over 8 million. So they came, we provided them with the documentation, and then afterwards, once they concluded the investigation, they billed us with this amount of 42,000. We said, no, but this is ridiculous. I mean, we only incurred expenditure of 8,000. You're coming back with a bill of 42,000. So we engaged with them, and about a month back, they came back to say the amount has been written off. that matter has been settled. The next matter, the litigation case pertains to the Philippine horticultural case. So this is also a long-standing matter. The matter has been concluded in terms of the outcome of the court, but now we are waiting the legal fees to be paid. So between legal services within the Department of the Premier and the State Attorney, they are liaising to get the legal fees so that that matter can be settled. Thank you.
We can confirm that that matter that has also been settled in August this year. We paid that 58,000 and we received all the invoices. It was outstanding invoices that we were waiting from the State Attorney's office, and we've received that matter. So for this year, it will be off the books as well.
Thank you for those replies, HOD.
There was the question in terms of the assets, and that's an ongoing process each year in terms of minor and the major assets, and our asset management process and the audits that we undertake. And then the process that we followed on every year in terms of investigating, in terms of what the situation is in terms of those assets. And then if there is specific losses, then the process that we follow, maybe to ask Anwar and CFO to maybe add some detail in terms of that.
Thank you, HOD. So in terms of the major assets, as indicated, it was 29 at this stage. Subsequent to that, we followed up. Just keep in mind also that with the asset verifications, we've got working from home arrangements with officials. So it becomes a bit of a challenge to verify the assets at reporting date. So we continued with the exercise, and at this stage, there are still only 7 assets that we weren't able to verify. So we are looking into that matter. In terms of the lost cases, 5 of those cases were written off as to date. What transpired here was some of them are also a bit of a long-standing cases, but officials, they were break-ins at officials' houses, or they were taking taxis and they were robbed along the way. And those cases we did write off eventually. Thank you.
But it is something that we're managing throughout because it is a risk. So we do take that risk and manage that risk. But yes, it is something that we're managing each year, and we're busy at the moment with the process to make sure that we manage that risk into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Calder, do you have other questions? I'm done with my questions as well. There's no questions for the questions. Thank you very much. We're going to go straight away to Cape Nature, but maybe there's some officials that need to leave.
Yes, so if the officials are welcome to excuse themselves, there's some other officials obviously that's closely involved with Cape Nature, and they will remain. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to continue. We did the introductions already, so we're going straight over to our Cape Nature annual report. Members, we are on governance, parts 352 to 73. Over to you for questions. Member Nakontla, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. A very detailed annual report indeed. Chair, okay, let me ask, I think on the, page 65, on the compliance monitoring work of this entity. Actually, my interest is just to understand. I'm not sure when you refer, it's 65, 66. I'm not sure when you refer to SOPs. Pardon me, I'm not in the space. I understand you've got these forums which links you with communities. So I'm not sure whether you are referring to SOPs with such structures, because my interest would have been what type of risks, as a agency you find working with such, and that's why I'm saying I'm not sure whether you're referring to those in terms of that SOP of monitoring. If not, please indulge me on my question. And then the second one is on your corporate social responsibility. On your social responsibility, I see the number of projects. Can we quantify what's the rent value of these projects and who pays? Is it yourself? Is it a diversified funding from you and perhaps any other players? If you can just explain such to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've just got one, and also on the social responsibility, the hikers network. That is a big problem that we're facing at the moment. If you can just explain more about that, because every other day you read in the paper, people being attacked and people, being mugged and killed. If you can just say how that works and how is that effective going forward. If you just give us some details on that. Members, any other questions? Okay. CEO, now I must say CEO, not HOD. CEO, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for the questions. On the compliance monitoring, I think there are two aspects. We have SOPs for monitoring various aspects, but I think if you're referring specifically to community and engaging with communities, we do have a stakeholder engagement officer who engages communities that are adjacent to the reserves, and I'll ask Mr. Ismail to talk about that, because then he can also talk on the number of projects we have, engagement projects, and how the income generated around that, and any expenditure we have associated with that. And then I'll come back to the hiker question, but Mbulelo, maybe some aspects discussing how we work with the hikers network. Not so much the muggings on Cape Nature hiking trails, but we do have extensive engagement with the hikers networks. So maybe Shiraz, would you? Thanks.
Thank you, CEO. So the SOPs referred to on page 65 and 66 is really just our standard operating procedure. It's an internal guideline that really guides the organization on how we engage across various areas of our work. So it's an internal document that guides officials and staff on how we engage, whether it's members of the public, whether it's partners, and so on. I will see. I'll also maybe take the question on the social responsibility and the hikers network, how that works. So with the social responsibility, we can quantify it, but a lot of it is sponsorship in kind, where communities will reach out to Cape Nature, whether it be a school, whether it be an NGO, saying, look, we're running a program with, let's use an example, youth at risk, and we need accommodation for a weekend. And then Cape Nature, because we manage these facilities, would then contribute the accommodation, maybe together with a staff member that would do environmental education and awareness with any particular group that reaches out to us and needs assistance. So in that way, we manage this. And we also got a standard operating procedure that guides how we manage these requests that we get from members of the public. As for Hikers Network, we've actually signed a formal MOU with Hikers Network. They're the largest grouping, and all smaller hiking groups belong to them. How they assist Cape Nature is they assist with cleanups, they assist with monitoring work, and they will also assist our staff with enforcement, especially at our reserves where we don't have access point and that's unmanned. And then they also get they've got a mini Hikers Network program. We're getting young kids involved and getting young kids into nature. So it's definitely a viable partnership that works both ways for us. And they do cleanups and trail audits for us and all of those types of things. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. And then maybe just to come back on the risks, I think our major mechanism in dealing with risks associated with communities adjacent to reserves is that we offer a consistent building relationship. We have a stakeholder liaison officer, we have a landscape manager. Consistent, we understand the needs of the community and build relationships, but also understand who are the community leaders, who are permanent members of the community, who are members arriving new in the community, and establishing those relationships. That's generally our process. And when there are issues, problem animals, fences, removal of biodiversity, poaching issues, fires, then we have stable relationships and contact numbers in communities, and that's our basic way of addressing that. Mulela, you covered, or you want to add in your trail network? Thanks.
Yeah, perhaps just to mention, also we work with our PAC, project areas of advisory committees. So we identify, or rather, these committees are made up of members of the communities, largely natural resource user groups, any sort of entities that deals with sort of environmental projects or programs, and we get them involved as well in terms of the whole process of engaging with communities.
Very much, Member Nkondlo. Is there anything further on governance that you got?
Chair, just want to check on page 68, 69. I see there's an increase in both your injuries on duty and lost time in the entity, and I think you give explanations there. Just want to know, first and foremost, do you as an agency or an entity have an OHS specialist in your team and management? But also, I mean, how are you managing? I see all the different things that you are doing, but obviously this picture does not look good if there's gonna, especially lost time or lost days, you know, because they've got an impact on your productivity or your efficiencies as an entity. So how are you managing this to ensure that at least it doesn't grow exponentially as we see it here? Thanks.
You Member Bryant?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to refer to page 64, and it's mentioned, I think it's towards the middle of the first paragraph, around the expansion of the conservation estate, the implementation of the stewardship model, which allowed the entity to advance protected area expansion in the landscape. And, you know, it is really heartening to read that the entities managed to add over 45,000 hectares to the protected area, which from what I can see here is an over exceeding of your target by 916%, which, you know, is really fantastic. Is this a trend that you anticipate continuing going forward? And are you going to, I mean, I suppose there's only so much land that one can continue to put into that protection estate. But how do you envisage that rolling out going forward? Are you expecting to see similar returns, so to speak? Thanks.
Thank you very much. CEO.
Thank you, Chair and members. We do have a OHS function that's specifically with one of our general managers. Interestingly, within the CEO's office. So, Mohammed, do you want to start with that, and maybe Barry can continue on how we manage risk and the risk incidents that we currently associate with the large increase over the last year or two. And then on the expansion estate, Coral, I'll come to you. But to start that answer, while the current executive and myself might like to claim that, Coral reminds me that 46 or 48,000 hectares was probably in the making for over 10 years. So, but Coral will answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Chair. In terms of the health and safety function, we have a dedicated health and safety function with a specific specialist manager and staff as well. They work across landscapes with the different staff and managers in landscapes to ensure that there are specific monitoring in place, that there are what's known as toolbox talks, and any risks, etc., that are identified, adequately communicated to staff so that they know what they need to do. They regularly send out messages. They send out specific posters, etc., with regards to health and safety. So that's in terms of the process that we manage. With regards to the specific increase in terms of the current or the annual report that the year under review, that's specifically as a result of the increase in fires and the dangers associated with the fighting fires. So obviously you would have firefighters in that line being exposed to extreme heat, extreme smoke, and in that instance, then because of being in that environment, then it would be classified as an injured on duty, and unfortunately, so they would be taken off the fire line and they would be treated as an injured on duty. So that would be the specific. Unfortunately, we've had a quite high fire season, and that is the reason for the increase in injured on duty. Thank you.
Thank you for the question on protected area expansion. Yes, it was a windfall, and it is the result of almost 20 years of rolling out the stewardship program in the Western Cape to enable Cape Nature to expand protected areas onto private land. So it does rely on private land willingness. And if one thinks about the size, finding properties that are that size, there are a lot of small properties. So it is a long process of negotiation in terms of getting there. But also, I think it's important to note that not all expansion areas are equal in the context of it isn't about taking any area. It's taking areas that have an important biodiversity contribution to make and to pursue the negotiation. So hence it takes a while to get there. And we will always have an ambitious target that we will try and get that is aligned with the global target for the Convention on Biodiversity, but we have to acknowledge what our capacity is in the process of getting there. And I think in terms of the question of the trend, so there are still several willing landowners out in the Western Cape who want to contribute that we are pursuing. So it will probably asymptote at some stage, like where it would get saturated in terms of those that are willing. And then we would look for what the alternative mechanisms are to secure the important biodiversity and ecological infrastructure in the province. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can we move from governance? Can we move to page 84 to 89, PFMA compliance report? So there's everybody's going to jump on the 1.2, page 86, 1.2, if you can explain that. And also the late submission of invoices on 89. So that's my two. I think I took everything. But Kotla, you found something else. Kotla?
I'm available, Chair. My two questions, you've asked the other ones on the late payments. I think is the limited bid. Fortunately, we're here. You should know the drift by now, unless you were also members of parliament sleeping. I'm hoping you're not. The second one, Chair, is on the laundry extension. I see the original contract was on 19 Rand 95 cents per 1 kg. And in the extension, it's 22 Rand 90 cents. Explain why. would you then extend? And when on the extension, the cost is higher than the original contract value. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member, for those questions. I think all 4 of those questions, I'm going to pass to the CFO. Thanks.
Thank you very much, CEO and Chair and Member, for the questions. In terms of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, so I think just a correction on the tables, it's not the rands 1,000, this was 50,400 rands. So in terms of what had happened here is that due to a misunderstanding and miscommunication with a disgruntled customer arrived expecting his booking to be honored. When he realized his booking had been cancelled, he was disgruntled, and then he would not accept anything else. And Cape Nature had to then pay for separate accommodation to house him. And because it was peak season, there was nothing available except for a specific private sector establishment. So therefore, Cape Nature incurred an additional 50,400 rand in having to pay for his accommodation during this time. So that resulted in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. But because he had already paid for his accommodation, we recovered 26,880 from him, and the balance was then referred to. So in terms of the National Treasury process and guidelines that has been followed, we've instituted disciplinary process amongst the 2 staff that were involved. One was an intern, one was a manager, and there was a misunderstanding and miscommunication between the intern in Cape Town and the manager out at the reserve. And it obviously happened over a number of months. So therefore, a disciplinary process was conducted, and that process has been concluded. The outcome of that is that they have accepted their guilt in that process. They accepted responsibility. They made a mistake. There was a misunderstanding, miscommunication, and the decision was taken that the money cannot be recovered from the employees but should be written off, and that submission is on its way in terms of National Treasury prescripts. So that's in terms of 1.2 and the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. It was just one incident. It happens, you get a disgruntled staff member, a disgruntled customer. And in that situation, the customer is always right, so we've got to keep the customer happy. In this instance, it was a customer that had been coming continuously year on year. It was an existing customer, a loyal customer, so it felt that the best option under the circumstances was having to accommodate the person. So in terms of the late and non-payment of supplies, I think just to clarify in here, this actually relates to not necessarily that we paid late. We actually paid the suppliers mostly on time. What had happened is that the date of the invoice may have been more than 30 days, but we actually received the invoice within 30 days. And often we still have to apply our due diligence to ensure that goods and services was actually delivered. And hence, in certain instances, invoices are not necessarily paid on time as per the table. So in terms of the strict terminology, yes, it was paid after 30 days, but in reality, it was paid within the 30 days of us receiving it and doing our due diligence. In terms of the limited bid, in this instance, what had happened is there had been severe floods in the Western Cape I think in June and September last year, as a result of which at the Cederberg, Algeria campsite, there was significant damage to roads. The service provider, Rods Construction, Naylor and Naylor were already in place on another project. And in order to get the reserve opened before and to repair the damages due to the floods, it was decided that the best course of action would to actually go and use the contract that we have with them. They were on site on another contract. For us to follow a procurement process and a tender process at that point in time would take us 4 to 6 months. Before that, you have an SLA in place. And that would have meant that the reserve would have been closed for that period of time. But having the service provider on site, we could get them in. They were already there on another project. They were willing to assist and help. We then managed to get the reserve open again on 1 December so that we could still protect our revenue stream from that reserve. The contract extension, and that was just in terms of from the date, I think the original contract of 1995 was 2 years prior to us having done the extension. So we were busy with a tender process for the new contract, and we therefore just needed to extend the contract just so that we could finalize the new tender process. Obviously, 2 years inflation, the service provider is a small, medium enterprise from a Bostock, and therefore it was decided that it wouldn't make sense to negotiate with the service provider, and they wouldn't make any profit. It's a small, medium enterprise. It's only a few rands extra. It's better to just negotiate and have that in. And I think they were also the successful bidder for the new tender as well. Thank you, Chair.
you. Is there follow-up, Emma Kondlo? Can we move on? I just want to follow up mine with the 30 days. I've read it there and I saw the late payments were largely as a result of late submission of invoices. But don't you take that in consideration if the invoice is submitted late, that you then count the 30 days from there? Because it's not your fault, but it looks bad like this. You understand what I'm saying? So it looks bad, but you're not at fault. But yet you only receive the invoice at that day. Don't you then count it from that day? I'm just thinking it's because this looks they've got 0 and you've got 991, so it's extremely bad. Just answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think in terms of that, yes, I think operationally, I think the staff, we operate in, as you mentioned, but I think just for the completion of the table, they completed it from a purely perspective, just looking at the date. So I think going forward, we will engage with the staff and just make sure that they complete the tables more on when the date is actually received. Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah, thank you. We'll get there. Can we move on? Let's move on to Part F. I'm going to throw one out, and that is, of course, you know what I'm going to throw out is Note 29. The misstatements of Note 29. If you can, if you look at all the pages, Note 29 at the bottom, and that is page 101, but Note 29 is on that page and all the other pages. I've read through Note 9. And then debt impairment movement on page 102. If you could just explain that. Members? Member Kondlo?
Chair, page 1, there's this one. Okay, page 102. Chair, maybe this one to more both the minister and the HOD. If one looks at the revenue versus the expenditure, you know, I'm not sure, and I see that the entity is sitting on this reporting year on a deficit. But given this budget constraints, we are all, frustrated about. Minister, is this a financially sustainable model of Cape Nature? And I'm looking at your revenue sources, with the biggest being government grants, some ecotourism and access. I'm not sure whether there is that conversation because as we are starting to see, money is disappearing in terms of state coffers. So surely, I'm not trying to raise an alarm about the entity. I'm sure it has been able to manage, but you can already see that it's sitting at a deficit of about 8.5 million already. So I'm just wanting to understand that when you look at, the sustainability and the financial health of this organization, is this the best way, of funding or resourcing the Cape Nature, which is a very important, I think it plays a huge role. But I think looking at whether we'll be able to sustain it in the next 10 to 20 years, I think continues to be a question that we must answer. Just want to pose that one, Chair.
Thank you very much. HOD?
Thank you. I'll give a first response. Cape Nature is a 3C entity. They're not a 3D entity, so they were never set up to become self-sufficient. And in terms of the conservation estate, the provincial assets that Cape Nature is managing, although we are at it in terms of exploring fully how we reduce the cost in terms of managing the conservation estate, making sure that there's efficiencies and the innovation and everything is there, and the benchmarking that happens within the sector to make sure that the management effectiveness is there. And we likewise making sure that we enhancing the revenue as much as we can. The revenue will never be enough to cover the operational expenditure. But of course, the work continues to both reduce cost and increase revenue. The conservation estate, in terms of the biodiversity that Cape Nature manages, is extremely intensive to manage in terms of being a fire-driven system, 3,405 kilometers of road, 875 buildings, almost 1 million hectares in terms of conservation estate. But yes, that is an important question because yes, as we come under the budget pressure, there is the pressures that we see on Cape Nature. So we are worried, what does it mean for the performance of Cape Nature in terms of really managing and looking after these assets of the people of the Western Cape. But I don't know whether the Minister wants to add, otherwise to ask Cape Nature to respond.
Maybe. Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, from my side, just to say that I think sometimes government underestimate the value that they get in the conservation estate and the protection of conservation. Government must stay a partner. The role that we need to play, the money that we need to put aside to protect and to support entities like Cape Nature, it's currently under pressure and it's part of that debate. I really think that we do get a lot of value out and we can double that value if we've got the funding to put in, because Cape Nature also play a huge role in protecting our whole of biodiversity. But then on the income side, to try and get income, get tourists within the facilities, etc., it's crucial. And they've managed to do quite well. But there must always be a balance that we don't get so expensive that South Africans can't go to our resorts. So it's that balance. I'm a firm believer that we need to support Cape Nature so that we can open up nature and create that love within our communities. Because if children start to appreciate nature, then long term, there will be a huge benefit for all of us. And it's getting that by balance. Yes, we must have 5-star resorts. Yes, we must tap into the overseas market, etc. But we must balance it out with, we must be accessible and we need to, the pricing models must be that our own people can have access to their assets at the end of the day.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member. Chair, I'm going to let our CFO talk to the technical note 29, but also when you've done that, Mohammed, also talk about how we manage project reserve, and that talks to our deficit planning as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think before I go on to note 29 and the debt impairment, just to continue the theme and the topic in terms of that. So I think this is one of the dangers of looking at an annual report for 1 year. If you look at Cape Nature's annual report for the past number of years, you'll see we've actually made profits if you look at purely from a graph accounting perspective. So Cape Nature has managed to build up in the good years, we built up quite a significant number of profits and reserves. However, unfortunately, with the flood damage that we had that was so significant in the past financial year, we had to then draw down from those reserves to pay for the repairs and maintenance that was needed. So outwardly, it looks as if it's a deficit for the year. But in reality, if you look at it from a 5 years perspective, there isn't much of a deficit. So if you look at it historically, we even bounced back, even we've managed to buffer ourselves for COVID. So we had reserves built up at one stage. We had around 40 odd million rand worth of reserves. So I think if you look, I think it's note 20, just 1 second for me, please. So not note 20, note 13. Yes, if you look at note 13, you'll see there's a project reserve. So that just highlights how for this year we've used significant amount of that. So it's just the accounting treatment of how you look at how you treat this. So that's income that we've received in the previous years, but spent in the current year. So you won't see it on the income line in the income statement because it came in previous years. But because the expenditure was in this year, it sits within this year and it shows as a deficit in this year. So I think from that perspective, we are, I think, in a good financial space. But obviously, if there are more shocks to the system where we now have to spend from those reserves, over the next 2-3 years, it will become a challenge, and it's important that we do buffer ourselves. In line with that, when you work out the cash position of the entity, we actually had a cash surplus for the year of around, I think it was 13 or 14 million, and we did submit a request through to Provincial Treasury so that we could retain that, so that we could fund and keep the entity sustainable. In terms of note 29, the prior year adjustments, I think the first aspect to consider is that any entity or department, you use materiality in preparing a set of financial statements. So none of these misstatements or prior errors are material. They're below the materiality level. And the only significant one is the impact of the conditional grants. And unfortunately, what had happened here is that the agreement with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment at national level was signed very late. and the amounts were then changed quite late in our financial. It was done after we submitted our financial statements for audit, and hence, because the amount was immaterial, we didn't make any adjustments to the financial statement, so we made the adjustment in this financial year. The other aspects in terms of, there was just a misallocation of 9,000 Rand, and that's a small error, and then in terms of the triple P business income, there was also a net error of around 8,000. Those are just misallocations. That's a normal part of accounting, but because it's immaterial, it's but we still reflect it and disclose it. In terms of the debt impairment on page 102, unfortunately, the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment had significant challenges in getting their procurement processes finalized in order to pay all the provincial public entities for the work done on marine protected areas. So what had happened is, as at the end of the financial year, they owed us approximately just over 7 million Rand of committed funding from their part in terms of signed MOUs we had, or MOAs we had with them. There was an amount of, I think, just over 7 million. And as a result of that, we had to then, because they hadn't paid us for, I think, over more than 24 months. So it was 2 or 3 years that had actually built up together. And therefore, because we weren't receiving that funding, we had to then show it as a debt impairment, as a bad debt. So we had to provide it as a bad debt. I do know that they've now finalized those agreements, or they finalized the process and gotten approval from National Treasury to pay provincial public entities. Again, it's a bit of a misunderstanding of technical terms. When can a national department transfer funds to a public entity in terms of that? Is it a procurement? Is it not a procurement? Do they have to follow a procurement process to transfer funds to a public entity? So there were a lot of technical debates and arguments at the national department that they had to clear with National Treasury. So they finally gotten approval for that in terms of their processes. So those funds should hopefully be coming through by the end of this financial year. Thank you. I think that covers for the question.
Yeah, thank you. Member Kondlo?
My last two, Chair, on this one is on page 130 and 131. There's the capital expenditure, which is said to be already contracted but not provided for. What does that mean? And I see it has actually almost tripled from the previous financial year. If you can just explain that, and also the situation of the contingent liabilities, because I think it says here the amounts reliable sort of estimates. I'm not sure whether also they've been provided for in terms of the budget, because I assume these are open cases that have not been concluded. If you can just give an indication about them, because some, I think, stem from 2016. If I read the other one, 2011, case of October M versus Cape Nature. So I just want to understand at what point or what's the status of these cases. Thanks, Chair.
Brian?
Thanks, Chair. Just going to page 127, point 15, under ecotourism. That's a tourism income increase of 7% year on year. And as I understand, that's been driven by an increase of the day and overnight visitors to the Cape Nature facilities. Again, 24% increase in revenue, which is fantastic, and I believe that's a record high as well. To ask a similar question to the one I asked earlier, is this again a trend that you anticipate continuing, or was there perhaps a kind of what they would call COVID revenge that was taking place in the years post-COVID, where people just got extremely excited about going out and seeing facilities again? I'm just interested to see what you think contributed towards that. Thanks.
Thank you. If I can just maybe just add to, I also looked at 127.50, note 15, film fees. There's a drop there. Maybe, I'm just looking at generating income, and how do you get that to the previous levels, and because it's a way to generate funding. And then Member Kondlo spoke about note 26 contingencies, and the problem I have here is the These amounts are not considered reliable estimates by management and is included for information purposes only. If you can just explain that definition there, and then, as you said, the cases, some of the cases 2009. 23 and 28 of February 2009. So just give us, what is the way forward on these matters? Thank you. CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. CFO, I'll come to you for 130, 131. And then on contingent liabilities, maybe you could start the CFO, but then we'll go to Barry, our head of legal services, general manager, including legal services, to talk about that. And there's where fire disputes and why it's important that we have fire breaks on that. But Barry will give some background to that. And then lastly, on the tourism, I'll come to Shiraz, just to say we've just completed our strategic planning for the next 5 years, and we want to maintain that 7% year on year for the next 5 years. It will take the entity to generating almost as close to 100 million over the 5 years. It is a stretching target, but we are investing in communication and marketing, but Shiraz will speak to that. So that we want to maintain and we hope we have an standing committee in 5 years on that stretching target, but we want to maintain that. So let me start with the CFO, then Barry on contingent liabilities, and then Shiraz on tourism income, and then include the film fees as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, CEO, and thank you, members, for the questions again. In terms of capital commitments, let me just bring this here just to make it easier. Yes, the increase for that is as a result of contracts. So what happens here, a capital commitment is where we've got an existing SLA or an agreement with a service provider with a specific value for a specific product, etc., to be constructed. And they will then, once that is in place, so obviously at year end, it means we had a contract in place with that service provider, but they did not complete the work, either due to different reasons. So the biggest impact here was in terms of the reason for the increase is actually in terms of the perimeter fencing. That was an agreement we had with Casidra, which is also a public entity in the Western Cape province. And as a result of their procurement processes and due diligence that needed to be applied in terms of the procurement processes, because it was a number of projects that they are implementing for us. And as a result of that, there were significant delays, and those SLAs were only finalized very late in the financial year. So as a result of that, we had SLAs in place, signed, contracted agreements, but as at the end of the year, it was not complete. Hence, it's a capital commitment. And in terms of the GRAP reporting standards, we're required to disclose that information under Note 25, capital commitments. In terms of the contingencies, the definition of what it's not reliable estimates, the reason for that is the information in here is based on the most recent claim or notice submitted by the plaintiff. So in many cases, the information in here is based on an original claim, which is quite often either very high or it could be low. The actual amount that you may end up paying will vary based on the various stages of legal engagements, whether it goes to arbitration, mediation, whether we settle in kind or we don't, or it gets dismissed, etc. Often, a lot of these cases, there are, and Barry will speak to that in terms of how the process is when we engage and what we engage and how we follow up on that. Yes, it is quite a high amount, and Barry will then provide further feedback in terms of the processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the contingencies, so yes, it is quite a bit. It's 297 million and more, 18 matters, and we've prioritized it over the past financial year. And what we've done is we've created a proactive litigation strategy with the Department of the Premier Legal Services and the State Attorney, because these contingencies have been growing and we need to get some of these off the list. So we've identified matters for settlement. We've identified matters that we're going to request for removal from the roll because nothing's been done. The challenge we have is that we're not master of suit. We defended in most of these matters, so we have to approach the court for these matters to be withdrawn. And then there is about 3 matters that we're currently in negotiations for settlement, and just proviso, our settlements are never monetary. It is services in kind, and we've had historical success with that. in the past, and it looks like we're going to succeed again in this 3 settlement negotiations, which will take our contingency down by about 70-80 million. The ones that we are going to approach court for to be removed from the court roll, we're looking at about additional 20 million that can be removed, and the remaining we will defend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just on the sustainability of the tourism, what we've seen is since post-COVID, we've seen year-on-year growth across all our tourism revenue streams. A lot of it is driven by the domestic market, not so much the international market. A very interesting thing that we've observed now over the last 3 years, young people between the ages of 26 up to about 34, 35 years old, that market has grown significantly for us. Traditionally, it used to be your 35 to 45 market, and then obviously 45 to 55. That used to be our stronghold. But we've seen this massive insurgence of young people wanting to engage with nature. There's also a whole culture now around healthy living, wellness, and we've seen that come through into our reserves. Also, what's important for us, we need to maintain what we have. So we're doing a lot of marketing to our existing, but we also need to grow. So we're also looking at new markets to grow. As part of our 5-year strategic plan, there's definite opportunity for us to grow the international market, and we're going to be targeting that going forward. Okay, just on the filming, last year in America, the Writers Guild had a massive strike. 11,500 screenwriters participated in that strike. It lasted 148 days, which then impacted on films and film production and so forth. This year, we've already seen quite a big recovery, so that will recover over this year. Thank you.
Thank you. What? Okay. Member, is there any other questions? I'm done with my questions. Member Kondlo, you're done? Can we call it a day? Okay, that's it. I'm going to give the Minister, HOD, CEO, and maybe the outgoing chairperson, all of you, I can give opportunity, and the incoming opportunity just to do concluding remarks, and then who's the lucky draw today? I think Member Wessels to do the thank yous. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, thank you very much. From my side, Chairperson, thank you to you as the chair and the committee for the questions. We appreciate it. It's always for us, we nerve-wracking, but it's also a learning experience, even through the preparation and so forth. It's becoming better at what we're doing. But I need to thank the internal auditor, Francois, in our department, as well as Paul Slack. The internal audit units, I've got huge respect for them. They keep us on the straight and narrow. They interact throughout the year with us. And part of our success is usually because of the quality and that they bring to the table. So thank you, Paul, and thank you, Francois, for keeping us on the right track. And thank you to the whole team. This is a fantastic team working day and night, long hours. We're very privileged to have them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members, for the important work that you do and the keeping us on our toes. Yeah, thank you, Minister, and thank you to Cape Nature for the good work that you do in difficult circumstances. We, of course, always expecting the continuous improvement. Yeah, but with those few words, I'll give over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the chair and committee members, MEC and head of department, and the outgoing chair. This is my first meeting, both the standing committee in the morning and SCOPA, having joined at the beginning of this year. And in my handover from previous CEO, this date was marked in red to say you have to be prepared and on your toes for this. So it's been a whole day. We've been here, and thank you. I'm not sure which is as good or as bad as previous years. I'll find out from my colleagues at the end of as we leave today. But thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the time, and also for the members for the time that you've taken to go through these reports very carefully and to check that we're doing the best that we can in terms of certainly Cape Nature and the department. I'd like to thank the Minister and the Head of Department for your support during the time that I was the Chair. We've done well with our new incoming CEO. Best of wishes going forward, Ashley. And then also to the new incoming Chair, to Kiki. Good luck, Kiki. And I think we've got the board in good hands. And also to my finance board member over that side, who make sure that the questions that come this way, that we can address them with a reasonable calmness. And I think it's always been good to be in that position. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I think today was a very constructive engagement where the numbers and the information have been interrogated. So yes, I think very beneficial interaction. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Member Wessels.
Thank you, Chair. That was a lot of thank yous already. No, Chair, no, from my side, I think what makes the Western Cape special is the environment, the air we breathe, the coastline, the parks that we've got, and how our environment is actually maintained, considering how things are going in the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So from my side and from the committee side and the members' side to the department, the Minister, Cape Nature, the value that you add to this province is tremendous. So from our side, thank you very much. It was a good engagement. It's a proper 8 to 5 today for me. So from my side, thank you very much, and it's very much appreciated. Thanks.
Very much, Minister. Thank you very much. Your meeting is adjourned. Our committee will stay behind to do the resolutions. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Like I usually do it, Mr. Davids will just read the resolutions, and if you have any additions, please do that. And then there is some well-deserved refreshments in the members' lounge. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, members through you, Chair. Honourable members, so for the department under Part C, there was nothing, it was basically just questions and answers. Please explain. And then for Part F of the department, Chairperson, just for, it was basically just as you always say in your transversal resolutions about the footnote, about the 30-day payment, etc., etc. And the department also said for Member Nkondlo's request under note 2.4, page 227, that they will include also a future footnote on how the municipalities spend their funds, etc., etc. And Chairperson, for your foreign travel question on page 232, the department said that they can provide a list of partnerships, international partnerships. That's for the foreign travel, Chair. And then under Cape Nature, Chairperson, there's basically nothing that was captured that's really stood out, Chairperson. One of the concerns was raised by Member Nkondlo about the financial sustainability, but the Minister answered that, Chair. Yes, and then just a 7% year-on-year increase from Member Brian. And yeah, they've answered that as well, Chair, and as well as the film fees drop. And they've explained that as well, Chairperson. Yeah, and then your misstatement question and the debt impairment movement. They've answered all of that, Chair, including note 6, the trade debtors on page 119, the capital expenditure, and the contingent liabilities, Chairperson.
Members, any additions to that? Member Kontla?
Chair, can I request that we ask them to provide us I think that breakdown which the legal person was explaining about how they're planning to reduce all of that, and going to courts and everything. I think that a report will help just to close on that matter. Thanks.
It's a good one, yeah. Thank you. Is there any other additions? Is that it? Are we fine? Thank you, members. The meeting is adjourned.